Our readings focus on this theme of the training of discipleship. The training of discipleship. Jesus in the gospel says, no disciple is superior to the teacher, but when fully trained, then every disciple will be like his teacher. And St. Paul is really focusing on, in this first reading, how much work and effort has to be put in to train as a disciple. Every day we are supposed to be training, which there's a lot of work. Salvation is not guaranteed. Nobody is guaranteed salvation. Even Paul himself, that's one of his points here, is that he's worried that he will be preaching to other people and teaching them how to be saved, but not living it himself, and therefore he won't even be saved. So there's a fear, there's this healthy fear of not attaining salvation because we're not fully trained. And he gives these different examples, which we're pretty familiar with, that of competition, different competitions, a race or a boxing match. Imagine if you're going to go have to fight Mike Tyson or somebody, some big person, and you don't train for the fight. Well, what's going to happen? You're going to get your butt kicked. You're going to get the victory? No. Do you get some consolation prize? No, you're out of here. You get your butt kicked in a black eye and you go to the hospital. And so, the same thing with a marathon. If you don't train for a marathon, are you going to win? Maybe you'll finish after a long time, but are you going to win the prize? No, if you don't train, you don't get nothing. You're not going to even get a consolation prize. Thanks for participating. No, you're going to get sore for the next couple of weeks and have to recover. So this is true of all things on earth. How much more true of things of heaven? This is Paul's point. We have a lot of work to do as disciples of Jesus Christ. We have a lot of work to do. And Jesus is focusing us on, the work is on ourself, Our job is not to walk around and try to train everybody else. We're not personal trainers for each other. Let me give you this advice and give you that advice. No. Focus on the splinter in your own eye. Focus on your own training. You've got your own battles that you have to do. I've got my own battles I have to do. I'm like Paul. So Paul's point, too, is it doesn't matter how great the preacher is and what he's preaching and how great a teacher is, because just because he's teaching it correctly does not mean he's living it correctly. He still has to do that, too, Imagine a doctor who prescribes great medication and great diets and stuff and keeps everybody else healthy, but he don't live it himself. He doesn't even prescribe his own medications and his own diets, and so he's always sick, and he dies. What good is that? And so, I've got a lot of work to do myself, just not only to preach the authentic gospel and proclamation and find a way of teaching it to each person, but I have to live it myself, I have to do my own self-care. I have to disappear sometimes alone with our Father to pray like Jesus did, to grow my own relationship with God. I've got my own training I have to do. We've got our own training, every single one of us. You have to just think about it and break it down. If you want to be great at just even a job, whatever job it is, how much work and effort goes into training and growing in that job and those skills and that knowledge. And especially it's easy to see with sports, but not everybody plays sports. But if you just think of the people who do sports, how much training goes into playing sports, or especially a competition where there's a battle where somebody's punching back at you. The boxing match, the wrestling match, the UFC match, or something like that. These people, they train, their whole life revolves around this. Good point for discipleship. Our whole life should revolve around Jesus. They have their hours of being awake during the day are planned out. They have proper sleep time, so they recover. It's all planned out. They have a certain diet. Right? They're spending a certain amount of money on certain amounts of food, a different diet. They have to pay money for trainers, so their whole budget is revolved around their training. Our whole budget should be revolved around our discipleship training, and our eating and our sleeping and our exercising and our social life. And there's a lot of things we have to give up to grow in discipleship. If it's that true on any earthly training, all the more on supernatural training, on discipleship training. There's a lot of things. We are supposed to be, the number one thing we're supposed to be training and practicing every day is self-denial. Jesus said, if you want to follow me, you've got to deny yourself, pick up your cross daily, and follow me. Christians, we should be the first ones to say, I'll sacrifice. I'll sacrifice. I can deny myself. I do it every day. No big deal, huh? I'm well trained in self-denial. You know, think about in the competition, any sports at all. Doesn't matter if it's basketball or wrestling or running. They train so much that they don't even have to think about it anymore. It's just an instinct. You know, when they're in the boxing match and somebody punches at them, they don't have to think, oh my gosh, he's starting to punch at me. Maybe I should try to dodge. Should I dodge left or right or go down? No, it's an instinct. They dodge and they counterpunch right away. They don't think about it. Automatically happens. We have to get our discipleship training like that, so that our instincts are the instincts of Jesus Christ. The way we respond to people, the way we respond to the world, that the way we're always seeking our Father's heart in prayer, the way we love the Scriptures and dig into the Scriptures every day. We spend time with God not only praying and petitioning and listening, but we're seeking the Scriptures because God has spoken to us for thousands of years. And thankfully, many of those people wrote those things down, and they're in the Scriptures. There's 73 books in there that we can read to see what God has already said to us, what He's still speaking to us today, how He has revealed Himself to us in those words, who He is and what His mind is and what His plan is for humanity. It's all right there. We've got to dive in and dig in and search the Scriptures and be familiar so that the Scriptures are an instinct to us. They just well up in our hearts at different moments, and we can just recite them. You say, where'd that come from? I didn't even know I was remembering that. But the Holy Spirit will stir those things up if you put it in you. It's not enough that you just go to Mass, not even just daily Mass, because if you are going to daily Mass, then any Mass, even just a Sunday Mass, it implies that you're getting homework, right? If you're actually, when you go to Mass, you're worshiping God, and the Scriptures are proclaimed, the Scriptures are telling us things to do. And hopefully the homilist is also expounding on the Scriptures and giving us more things to do. You're going home with homework. So even if you're just going to Mass, it's not enough, because the Mass itself is telling you to go home and do more. And in fact, the Mass is called the sending. It means you whatever happens here at Mass, whatever you receive at the Mass, you're sent off to give it away. To give it away to those you encounter in the world. Look at how much work Paul was doing. He was training himself to become all things to all people, so that perhaps some of them, at least some of them, would be saved. You know, is that our mindset, that when we get out there in the world, that one of our goals is whoever I come across today, I want to figure out how can I get the gospel into their life? You know, whether they're rich or poor, it doesn't matter what their race is or whatever they're struggling with or what their background is, that when we enter into conversation with them, it's our goal to see, how do I get the gospel into their life? This is training and discipleship, and really just the basics. Really the basics. What is your training schedule every day? What's your training schedule every day? When do you wake up to pray? When do you spend time in the Scriptures? When do you spend time sacrificing and doing penance for someone else? When do you spend time evangelizing, sharing your personal testimony of Jesus Christ and how He has transformed your life? When do you spend time developing and sharing that testimony? When do you spend time praying for somebody else in person, praying for their healing, for their deliverance? When do you spend time saying what Jesus said and doing what Jesus did? Every single day, so that it's training, so that it just happens like an instinct and you don't even have to think about it. It's just who you are as a disciple of Jesus. What is your daily training schedule as a disciple? If you don't have one, you got to get one. You have to get one. If you continue on in the fight with no training schedule, you're just going to get your butt kicked. You will not get to heaven unless you are fully trained like the Master. That's what it comes down to. And heaven's important, and it's more. And the most important thing is make sure we're not advising other people or telling other people how to get to heaven, but that we're doing it ourselves. That our life is proclaiming the gospel. So think of that. What is your personal training schedule? And it will change. It will fluctuate depending on the season in your life. Sometimes you can pray for 10 minutes a day. Sometimes you can pray for a half an hour a day or an hour a day. Sometimes, when you're retired, you can pray for 5 hours a day. I don't know. Training schedule will change as life changes, but there's got to be a training schedule. Otherwise, we're out of shape, weak disciples. We get stomped on in the battle. When chaos happens in the world, we react like the rest of the world instead of like a Christian. Right? And what did Jesus say? If we are building our house on solid rock, if we are training like a disciple of Jesus Christ, built on the truth of Jesus Christ and living our life for Jesus Christ, if we're building our life on the rock of Jesus Christ, when the storms come and the floods come and the wind comes and the rain comes, we will not get shaken. The rest of the world will get shaken. So if we are getting shaken, it's a wake-up call to each one of us. We're not building our house on the rock of Jesus Christ. So we have to just refocus. We have to refocus and recenter and reprioritize and get our training schedule back in place so that we're in shape. Lots of homework today. So let us stand together.